Welcome back to Access. I'm Ken.
I'm Nicole.
And today we're doing Lamentations. we're very respectful. Sometimes if you don't laugh, you cry.
Yes.
So
very much so.
And Lamentations doesn't have crying.
It's called Lamentations for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Lamentations is not technically a prophetic book, so you might be wondering, why does this come right after Jeremiah? The tradition of the Bible is that Lamentations was written or penned by Jeremiah. He was that weeping prophet we talked about. Most scholars today would probably question whether Jeremiah actually wrote these. The style doesn't seem to be terribly consistent, but they certainly are written about the fall of Jerusalem, same time. And we're trying to respect the character and shape of the Bible, and so it's not a bad thing to kind of see these in the same vein as Jeremiah. I think it may be better to think of these as sort of poetic versions of Jeremiah's prophetic version of the fall.
I think that's a really nice way of saying it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Nice.
I'll say one thing about the character of Lamentations as poetry. This is one of those books, like most poetry, translation, you always lose a little bit.
Yeah.
Or one of the most striking features of Lamentations, and you see this in some of the Psalms, but it is acrostic. Parts of it are acrostic, meaning.
What's an acrostic?
Exactly. I always do those questions, you know, don't I? I was watching you going, that is getting annoying. But not from you. It's a nice, fresh thing. I'll tell you what an acrostic is. The lines, as they're starting down the page, they'll start with a different letter on each line, and it's an alphabetical acrostic, Nicole. So it'll start one line, Aleph, which is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, goes all the way down. And so each of those lines will start with that letter. And, you know, my sense of why they do this, it's not just because they knew the alphabet, you know, could be clever. But the grief that they're pouring out and talking about is so profound and painful. And the world around them is so chaotic and doesn't make any sense anymore. That this is kind of a way of ordering the world such as they have. This is, you know, poetry that's trying to, you know, put a container, you know, if you will, around something that is fundamentally uncontainable.
Yeah.
So this is why I think they're a little bit more explicit about the shape of order, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's kind of like when you can't build things, like you always need something to build. And when you're decimated like they are and devastated, and they can't physically build things anymore, they have to build poetry.
Nice.
And like build that structure. And it's so highly structured.
Yes.
Because of that ordering principle. Yeah.
Nicely put.
And so I feel like it's a way for them to build back up.
There's a maxim in pastoral care that says the deeper the pain, the less that you as the caregiver say.
Yeah.
So the deeper the pain, the more silent you become. I think the maxim in poetry is the deeper with pain, at least with Lamentations, the more structured it becomes. Because there's just less of a reservoir for creativity and doing new things. They don't need new and creative.
No.
You know, they've got enough new things blowing them out of the water.
Right, and it's like they can control one thing.
Here's something to hold on to.
What they can control is how they lament.
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah, so that's kind of the history of it.
The themes of it is suffering, and that they are expressing their pain both as individuals and as a community, and they're crying out to God to really see their pain, because with the destruction of Jerusalem, they are feeling forgotten, unseen.
Yes.
Like, I think there's a phrase of like God being behind the cloud, where God can't see them. And so you have like this real visual imagery. And also that lamenting as a community creates a space where this pain can be re-experienced and seen, and then perhaps healed. That healing would come from the articulation of their pain. Name it, claim it, move on.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me, going back to Numbers, of that moment where the snakes are biting them out there.
Yeah.
And then Moses lifts up that snake.
The bronze snake.
Yeah, and when they look at the snake, they're healed. And I think the same thing in the Christian tradition of having, for some Christians, a crucifix with Jesus actually on it. For them, it's not a morbid, you know, that's not something our tradition does very much, but it's not a morbid symbol, that's sort of lifting up death. It's this acknowledgement that God is with us in our most painful and hard moments. Nice.
Yeah, nice.
In terms of a text that, you know, I would want you to know, the very first lament, there are 5 laments here. And the first one, probably the first and the last, are 2 really good things to know. The first one, again, it's like what Isaiah does with the suffering servant, is rather than just say, boy, what a bombed out mess Jerusalem is, rather than just simply describe it, he does something far more poetic and kind of, it creates pathos or empathy with this, is he imagines the city, when he looks at the city, he sees a widow, a devastated woman. He says, how lonely sits the city that once was full of people. How like a widow she's become. She that was great among the nations, she that was a princess amongst the provinces, has become a vassal. She weeps bitterly in the night with tears on her cheeks. So he personifies the city, and he personifies the people, really. So it's this sense of, you know, rather than thinking just about an issue, it's always, I think, more moving to think about a person or to put a face on it. And that's really what Lamentations tries to do with Jerusalem itself, is to put a face, or, you know, if you've known someone who's grieved, that's who you're going to see in this moment.
You know what I just thought of that's
What
really
did you just
interesting?
think?
Like that there's this shift in covenantal thought in Jeremiah and Lamentations, where before with like Moses and David, you have kind of like a contractual kind of idea, almost like between 2 corporations. Whereas starting with Jeremiah, and that shifts to a more individual responsibility, that the covenantal language shifts to a husband and wife, and it's more relational, and that's going to be this how you see covenant for the rest of the prophets.
The kind of the marriage vow.
The marriage vow, and this relational covenant. And
absolutely, and then in Hosea, you know, you see that. Where Hosea will see kind of imagines the relationship between God and Israel to be between this person Hosea and then Gomer, a temple prostitute.
Yeah, his prostitute wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's going to carry over.
Good times to come.
There's
there.
a great song about that. There is. And then in the New Testament, you're going to pick up that imagery with Christ and the church as the bride.
Absolutely.
And again, that marriage covenant.
And that, you know, what a great way to think about God.
Yeah.
You know, as this. I often, like, when I think about the Bible itself, and Lamentations is no difference. You know, sometimes we think about the Bible like it's a car manual, right?
Yeah.
Where, I need a new pair of shoes. I wonder what I should get. And, let's flip to the shoe section in the Bible. And
that in a car manual?
Well, all right. My life is out of gas.
Okay.
So we'll flip to the car manual, and it will. And there are some Bibles that actually have, like, if you have this problem or if you have this problem, flip to this.
Yeah.
And, like, it's a recipe book or a car manual.
Right.
Whereas I think a much better analogy for the Bible, it's more like a letter, even a love letter, or in this case, a mourning letter sent from someone who knows you almost better than you know yourself, who may be far away, but trying to reach out to you.
Yeah.
And you know, if you read the Bible like that, like it's this, you know, letter, and you pore over every detail of, like, you know, what do they mean by that sentence, and what are they, much different than.
Much different. I think that's such a more realistic way to do it, because the Bible's not going to solve your problems. You know, like a manual would.
Exactly.
Where it's like, problem X, solution Y,
bam,
happy results.